All right, we're live. Hey, everybody, welcome to the Football Outsiders live stream and podcast for Thursday, June 23rd, 2022. I am Aaron Schatz, Football Outsiders Editor-in-Chief, joined as always by Mike Tanier. And we're doing the latest in our series of tier lists this week. So, here to talk to us about pass rush tiers is Brandon Thorn from Establish the Run and the Trench Warfare Substack newsletter. Hello, Brandon. I want to wish you a happy Arch Manning Commitment Day.
Thanks, guys. I can't tell you much about what's going on there, but yeah.
You came out. You didn't know. You've been busy with other things. You do not know where he committed.
So we're going to reveal to you, the three guys who don't follow that much college football, we will now reveal to you where Arch Manning is going to school. It's not Rutgers.
It's Rutgers. Rutgers, and it's stunning. Shiano got him to come to Rutgers here. He's coming to Jersey, taking his talents to East Rutherford. I mean,
but it is a little bit surprising to me, having not really followed the Arch Manning commitment sweepstakes. He's going to Texas.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I know Texas still has a lot of allure, even though they haven't been very successful. So it's not too shocking, but yeah, you would think Bama or Georgia would have been in that.
I would have thought either one, he's going to go to Bama or Georgia because he wants to win it all, or two, he's going to go to Ole Miss or maybe Tennessee because of the family connections. I don't know where Cooper Manning went to school, honestly.
I don't know where Cooper went either, but it's an NIL thing. He's a hardship case. His family does not have a lot of money, does not have a lot of connections. So he had to go, to a school that would offer him opportunities right away financially.
Makes sense.
Unfortunately, Arch Manning will not have the opportunity to be sacked by all of the players that we are discussing today for at least 3 years. But we are going to count down or up, actually, the pass rush tiers the way that we have been doing over the last few shows. Mike has prepared his tier list, and then we are going to start at the bottom and move our way up. And once Mike introduces where he has a team, Brandon and I will give our thoughts and we'll move that team around if necessary. I've got in front of me a few stats like ESPN's pass rush win rate, adjusted sack rate, pressure rate, blown blocks from last year. Brandon has, of course, all of the film work that he does, tons of work on both offensive line and pass rush, including all the charting that he does of what do you call them? High quality sacks?
Yeah, high quality, low quality. I even have a rare high quality depending on level of competition. So that kind of helps inform what I think too.
Yeah, the difference between whipping your guy and running around for 5 seconds while the coverage is good and then finally taking the guy down.
Yeah. Just bringing context to every sack.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well,
we'll start at the bottom.
Yeah. I will kick things off at F. And I don't think this is a controversial selection here. One F-tier team, the Atlanta Falcons. Now, as Aaron knows, they were 32nd in Football Outsiders sack rate last year. They have not finished above 23rd in adjusted sack rate since 2017. They've not finished in the top 10 in adjusted sack rate since 2006. That's when John Abraham was on the Falcons. And they don't have anybody. This is the weakest part of a weak roster. I don't think this is controversial.
No, not at all. In all the stats, they were way down at the bottom. And, Lorenzo Carter is an interesting ad in the second-round pick. Ebitike, I don't know how to pronounce his name because I'm not good at pronouncing names. Ebiketie. But I don't think that moves the needle off the idea that this is the worst pass rush in the league.
Yeah, I mean, I think Grady Jarrett's, he's a monster, but he's primarily a really just outstanding run defender. He's a capable pass rusher, but yeah, they haven't had edge help in a long time. Ebiketie should help, and then they also drafted a guy named D'Angelo Malone, who I kind of liked as well. So they actually have some promise coming into the season, more so than the last couple, I think. A little bit more upside there, but yeah, I think starting them off on the bottom is fine.
They have a bad history drafting edge rushers too. I mean, Tackers McKinney did not work out for them. It was Vic Beasley, right? who I think had one strong season and didn't work out. So Abikedi is a good prospect here, but it's just hoping that they struck gold this time seems a little overly optimistic. Yeah. Let's roll to some Ds. My first D, and a lot of the Ds might be controversial. I think some of them might move. I'm going to start with the Arizona Cardinals. And, they lost 10.5 sacks when Chandler Jones left. And so what we're looking at now is Marcus Golden and what's left of J.J. Watt, and who knows how many games you're going to get out of J.J. Watt at this point. So put them in at a D.
Yeah, what's your feeling about J.J. Watt, Brandon? How much do you feel from watching him that he's got left?
I mean, I still think against the run, he's a pretty impactful player. That's obviously not what we're ranking though. So as a pass rusher, it's a lot of splash stuff. If he's going to make an impact, it's going to be probably from the interior. And yeah, I mean, he just doesn't have, with all the injuries that have just kind of piled up, he doesn't have the same level of explosiveness that he once did. He's still extremely crafty, very good with his hands, a lot of pass rush moves. He could still beat anybody at any time, but I just don't think that is going to happen very frequently, especially because now teams are going to be able to pay more attention to him with Chandler Jones gone. I really like Marcus Golden. He's like a high energy, high effort kind of guy who, has a little bit of speed, a little bit of power. He's just a fun guy to watch. But yeah, I mean, in terms of Watt, I think as a run defender is really where his value is right now. Crossing guys' faces, kind of taking things into his own hands. He has a lot of leeway as a run defender to kind of do what he wants. So he's able to backdoor runs and kind of make some splash plays in the backfield. So that's his primary impact right now, I think.
So, and did I miss anybody who's like an up-and-coming pass rusher on that team?
I actually, I like Kingsley Keke, or I think that's
okay.
Yeah, so he came over from Green Bay, and he was, he's kind of a rotational guy. He's not like a stud starter kind of guy, but he's kind of a guy to throw out there that I like on the interior. But the interior overall is very weak, and I think that's why I would have them, down here as well. They drafted a guy named Myjai Sanders from Cincinnati.
Yes.
So he's there, potentially kind of like a, rotational guy who can maybe provide some impact, but he's very skinny, not very strong. He's going to be a liability against the run. So, just one of those guys kind of like a developmental guy.
It's when I'm doing these, and it's like, if you're adding an edge rusher as a rookie when you have nothing, I was like, well, he's going to come, he's going to get his sacks, but he's probably going to get a lot of attention. He's going to have like the rude awakening. Whereas the teams that have a strong pass rush and add a pass rusher, for me, it's like oh my God, he's going to come off the bench on 3rd and 10 in like a NASCAR package, and he's going to be like this unstoppable force for that team.
Yeah, that's probably will be his role. And they also got a guy named Cameron Thomas, who's kind of similar to J.J. Watt in some ways in terms of usage at San Diego State last year. He's a guy who rushed, he played outside, but he moved inside a lot and made an impact against the run. He's going to be a guy who can be moved all over the line of scrimmage as well. Their NASCAR package is interesting, for sure. But yeah, I think hedging on them being kind of one of these lower tier teams going in with potential for more is probably how I would approach it as well.
Okay. Another lower tier team I'm putting in is the Houston Texans. Now, I always hear about how the Houston Texans, well, they've got these guys who are kind of professional because they bring in all these older free agents. Their older free agent is like Jerry Hughes. I don't think he's had a really good season since 2018. Only guy on the roster with more than 4 sacks last year, I believe, is Jonathan Greenard. So this is a team I felt pretty comfortable as a D team.
Hughes did have a lot of hurries last year. But you're right. Like everyone, especially on defense, it seems like every time we're hitting Houston, it's like I have to be like, the stats tell you that this team is more mediocre than you think they are. Not good, but closer to mediocre than you think when you first think of the Houston Texans. Like, for example, they were 18th in pass rush win rate last year and 23rd in adjusted sack rate, which is bad, but not horrible. Which bad, but not horrible is like the entire tagline for the Houston Texans defense.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good point because they actually have some capable guys on the defensive line. Greenard is a guy who showed some promise last year. He had quite a few, pretty quality sacks last year. Rasheem Green is a guy I really liked. He's one of my most underrated guys, I think, in free agency. He's kind of a versatile guy. You can move outside or inside from Seattle. I actually like him, probably the most of these guys in terms, especially what they can get on from the interior. And then Hughes and they have Mario Addison, I believe, as well. Both guys from Buffalo. Definitely older guys, but I mean, if you're rotating them with Greenard and maybe like a Corneronco, from the Rams, that's a decent, 4 rotation. Malik Collins and Rasheem Green, that's okay. I mean, it's like you said, I think it's below average, probably, not terrible.
I would move them at least up to D+.
Okay.
I mean, I realize that's not much movement, but as long as we're tiering things with D and D+, I think I would put Houston at D+. Sounds like you would too, Brandon.
Maybe, yeah. I'd like to see the rest of the teams. I think after we get more teams on the board, I'll be able to kind of, judge
move things around a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. The D+ thy name is the Houston Texans. Your D+ was invented for thee. Next up, I'm going to go with the New York Giants. I know they added Thibodeau, and I like Aziz. Can't say his last name right now. Ojulari. As much as the next guy. I'm going to tell you guys something I did, like to homebrew a stat, so I didn't have the same stats as Aaron. The Sports Info Solutions, I went for pressure rate, but I did pressure rate on first and second down and first, second, and third quarter. I want to take away 3rd and 10, 3rd and 12, times where it's like obvious pass pressure passing situations. So I can look at these pass rushes in the isolation of they can't scheme up like, stunts and blitzes and things like that, and say, what was their pressure rate on these early downs? The Giants had the worst pressure rate on early downs, except for the Falcons, who are in their own category and all these things. And so despite some additions, despite the fact that their overall pressure rates kind of look somewhat okay, I put them at D.
Yeah, it's really a question of whether you think Thibodeau moves them up.
Yeah, I mean, this is one I'd probably put a D+, just because Thibodeau, Ojulari, Leonard Williams, Dexter Lawrence, that 4. I think that's pretty strong. There's not much depth here at all, so that's kind of the downside. But on those money down type of situations, which is a little different than what you just alluded to, Mike. But I think kind of when it matters most, I really like what they're able to kind of put on the field in those situations. So I think that there's some legitimate upside there.
I haven't seen it. I mean, I've seen some of the guys you mentioned have been there 2, 3, 4 years.
Yeah, one of the problems with the Giants, this came up with run defense too, is like Williams and Lawrence, like you feel like watching them, the results should be better. Like when you just watch them, like the results of the team should be better than what the results of the team are.
In the run game?
In both. In both the run game and the pass rush, I think.
Yeah, I think Leonard had a little bit of a down year compared to the year prior, but he's still extremely skilled, talented. He could beat anyone at any time. You can't say that about a lot of guys. They just don't have that ability to do it ever. So he's still, while not as consistent, he's never been as consistent as his talent, is, really. He's had splash years, incredible years with the Jets, with the Giants. I think 2 years ago with the Giants, a few years ago with the Jets. So, but he hasn't really stacked those years together. So he hasn't elevated himself into that upper echelon of interior guys. But when you watch him, he does some stuff that other guys just can't do. So I still think, as if he's your top interior guy, interior rusher, that's better than a lot of other teams, I think, even with kind of the inconsistencies that he has.
All right. Now, why don't we hold off on that for a second? Because if you want to move the Giants up, I'm guessing you're going to want to move the Detroit Lions up. Obviously, added Aiden Hutchinson and they added Pascal in later rounds. They've added guys to the Akura brothers and some of the assets they have there. I talk about my low leverage pressure rate. Again, that's those early downs when it's sort of like the pass pressure has to do it on its own. The Lions were 30th in the NFL in that particular category. So,
Yeah, this one's interesting. Just looking at their depth chart and everything. I'm a big fan of Romeo Okwara. He's coming back from the torn Achilles, though. We'll kind of see what he looks like. I didn't watch Josh Pascal a lot, but I heard about him, just his physicality and stuff like that. Obviously, Hutchinson's going to help them a lot, I think. Not a whole lot on the interior there. I think there's maybe some potential Brockers is a stud run defender more than anything. Yeah. Charles Harris, a lot of those sacks last year were cleanup. Yeah. He's like a motor guy. Nice guy to have, in the rotation, but maybe like an okay number 2. I would hope that Romeo comes back 100%. Then it'll be him and Hutchinson on the outside, as their primary guys. So there's potential here, but yeah, D plus, probably for them as well. It's, like I said, until we get more teams on the board, it's hard to kind of stack these guys just yet and be firm on it.
For now, if you want to move one up, Giants or Lions, who would you move up? If I said you had to pick.
I think there's more options and a little bit more intriguing depth in Detroit, but I like kind of the top 3 in New York better in terms of, their top 3 guys. So that's tough. It depends which way you want to go. If you want to talk about longevity over the season, probably the Lions.
Okay.
But yeah, high-end potential, maybe the Giants. So,
all right.
Yeah, stuff.
I'll groove one in. You'll definitely want to move up, I think, which is the Chicago Bears. The reason I put them so low is that, their raw pressure percentage was only 23rd overall. You lost Khalil Mack. You lost Akeem Hicks as well. But you have one absolute, and most of these teams down here do not have one absolute in his prime above the marquee pass rusher, and the Bears still do with Quinn.
Yeah, from a stat perspective, I just want to point out the Bears actually led the league in adjusted sack rate last year, which is
very
crazy.
quiet. Very quiet.
In all the other stats, they were average. Pass rush win rate average, pressure rush average, blown block rate average. And again, no Mack this year and no Hicks, but they only really had Mack and Hicks for half the season last
year. Yeah. Just looking at the roster, I don't like this one as much as the other 2 we just named. Honestly, Robert Quinn, I'm as big of a fan as anybody on him. I wrote a huge article on him last year and just love his game. He's an incredible player. But aside from that, man, these are a bunch of okay guys. There is one guy who has a lot of upside, and that's Trevis Gibson.
Yes.
Who I think could be a legitimate number 2 edge rusher in the league. So he gives me some encouragement. They have Dominique Robinson, who's an intriguing rookie as well, but the interior is pretty bare. Angelo Blackson could give you some splash plays and stuff, but not a whole lot of depth here, I don't think. I don't know. I'm probably okay with them in like D, maybe D plus at the highest.
Okay.
It's an interesting dichotomy here between last year's results and what you look at when you see the roster. Because I agree with you with the roster. The roster doesn't look that exciting other than Quinn, but there was a pass rush here last year.
Yeah.
And Hitchhiker's Pie is asking, are the teams who had a particularly easy set of quarterbacks? And I'll get to another team here where I made an erroneous assumption when I put them in there. But I actually checked. I looked at Quinn, and it's like, holy cow, he had 173 sacks last year or whatever it was. And I'm looking through, okay, he had Huntley, 3.5 sacks of Huntley. That was probably a pretty easy game to get sacks in. But he's sacking Rodgers. He's sacking Kirk Cousins. He's not having an easy slate of bad teams, bad offensive lines, etc. So that's why I was like, I'm putting him at D now. But that Quinn is demonstrating that he is that guy in terms of a Pro Bowl caliber pass rusher.
He led the NFL in my metric last year for high quality sack score as well. So
yeah. And when you look at both the Giants and the Lions, and I guess the Texans are in there, and you see these teams, like when these games are blah, when you don't have lots and lots of high leverage situation, it tends to stunt the statistics of a lot of people. So on the one hand, if you're facing a bad team, you might get 8 or 9 sacks. On the other hand, the game might be over at halftime, and everybody's kind of going, the late game doesn't give pressure opportunities, sack opportunities, because they're slowing the game down. And you might see that reflected in especially these lower level teams.
I think we need to see who we're going to put at D plus and C, and then figure out if we want to
Yes.
move some of these D teams up. Because I feel like the stats from last year at least suggest that Chicago should be higher, and the fact that they have Quinn suggests that they should be higher. But somebody has to be at D, so we can't move up the Giants and the Lions and the Bears and the Texans. Like, we can't
Right.
move them up, right? So
I'm going to give you 3 C+ teams in a row then, so we can populate them and
D
start getting
plus teams.
D+. Thank you. D+ teams. We're going to start with the Seattle Seahawks. Then we're going to the Carolina Panthers, whose pressure stats last year looked good, but they lost to Son Reddick. And we're going to go with the Jets. When you talk about a team that on paper the front four looks very strong, I'm excited about the Jets' front four on paper, including getting Carl Lawson back and some of the guys they have on the interior. So those are the 3 D+. Attack.
Well, maybe you want to go ahead?
Carolina was fantastic in pass rush stats last year, but you have to ask yourself, how much does Reddick mean compared to like Brian Burns and the other guys who were there? They were actually second in pass rush win rate and third in adjusted sack rate.
Right. But we're stuck with, I look at this personnel as Brian Burns, and I added Iodonis in the middle.
Yeah.
But I look at the personnel and say, well, what is this? So it's
right. I know. Because you're not Yeturgros Matos replacing Reddick. It's like,
yeah, right.
Right. Yeah. I mean, maybe a downgrade there, but an upgrade with Ioannidis for sure. I mean, it's just health, with him if he stays healthy. But him and Derek Brown, that's a really nice duo on the interior.
Yeah.
Who knows if Davion Nixon will ever be anything, but he's a talented guy. So there, yeah. I mean, this one is pretty intriguing. The team that really catches my eye of the 3 that you mentioned, though, is the Jets. That's because Carl Lawson's coming back, Jermaine Johnson, Jacob Martin coming over from Houston. He has one of the best cross chop techniques in the NFL. He's a very good number 3, I think. Franklin Myers is a guy I love on the interior. Quinnen Williams, Solomon Thomas, Sheldon Rankins, Nathan Shepard. This is a deep defensive line, so I definitely would want them higher.
All right, let's move the Jets up. Put them at
what
C.
would you think? How would you feel about moving Seattle down
to a D?
Yeah, Darrell Taylor, Boye Mafe, who's a second-round rookie.
Shelby Harris comes in.
Shelby Harris comes in and Puna Ford, but it's not. It doesn't seem to me like a great pass rush here. Like there's no guy. There's no one guy where you're like, that's the guy.
Jamal Adams.
I'd probably be okay with moving them down. They have some young talent there, especially off the edge. But yeah, Puna Ford is, like I was just saying, a lot like Grady Jarrett. He's a stud run defender, but pass rush is probably just like solid. Al Woods is a strict run defending nose tackle. Shelby Harris is a nice little piece for sure, on the interior, but they need a lot of guys to step up. They need Alton Robinson to give them something. We'll see about Boye Mafe. Quentin Jefferson is actually a guy I like on the interior. From the Raiders,
Okay.
he's a nice piece, but I'd probably be okay with it moving them to a D. They also got a Chenlo Nwosu as well. I forgot about him. So they actually have some pretty decent depth. So I could go either way on that one.
Okay. I'm going to throw a couple C's at us. I'm going to start with 2 C's. Big teams always seem to be lumped together when I'm doing their defenses. The Chiefs and the Packers. Every time I put the Packers someplace, someone tells me how awesome the Packers defense is and how I've missed how wonderful they are. I'm looking at Preston Smith, Kenny Clark, and a bunch of rookies on their defensive front. And I know that's the case with the Chiefs, but the Chiefs have a stronger pass rush than that. But still, I'm looking at Chris Jones, and now they have Karl Aftis and what's left of Frank Clark when he feels like playing. And that adds up to a C for me.
These 2 teams are really there's a lot of high-end talent definitely on these teams. Chris Jones, probably the second best interior pass rusher in football.
Yeah.
After Aaron Donald, so total stud there. But yeah, Frank Clark, you just don't know what you're getting, which is tough. A lot of talent, obviously, but Karlaftis is going to help them. But yeah, I mean, I'm not super high on the Chiefs as a unit, but Chris Jones is so great that, it's tough to kind of knock them too hard. I like the Packers more than the Chiefs, though, as a unit. Rashawn Gary, I think, is, ascending. Preston Smith is good. Kenny Clark is good. Very good run defender. Dean Lowry actually has a really good bull rush, as you're kind of another interior guy. Jerron Reed can give some stuff here and there as a pass rusher, more of a run defender, though. Even Jonathan Garvin last year flashed a little bit. So they got a high-end top three and then a little bit of depth. So I like them probably a little bit more.
It's interesting. They were very low in ESPN's pass rush win rate, 27. But they were very good in pressure rate, where they were 9th, and causing blown blocks 6th last year. So, and that's not with Zadarius Smith, right? Because Zadarius Smith didn't play last year.
Right.
So that would suggest that the pass rush might be a little bit better, and maybe should be a C plus instead of a C.
Yeah, I'd probably be okay with that, honestly. Devontae Wyatt, I forgot to mention him as well. So yeah, I really like what they got there. It looks good at the high end, and then also the depth.
All right. We'll give you another C team. My hometown, Philadelphia Eagles. Their statistics from last year were not particularly strong. They added Hassan Reddick, who I think is going to be a great fit as sort of the cornerstone of what they're going to be doing pass rush-wise. Also added rookie Jordan Davis in the middle. More of a run guy, but I think he's going to have value as a pass rusher as well.
Here's what's wild. Pressure rate and adjusted sack rate were pretty bad.
Yeah.
ESPN's pass rush win rate last year, they were actually 4th.
Huh.
And that's without Graham and without Reddick.
Sometimes I think like there's got to be some things happening in terms of game situation with some of these things where you're getting these wins in particular circumstances.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. When
it's hard to get the breakdown of that, but like it's 3rd and 15 and you get these wins, but you don't get pressure, or I don't know how they handle screen passes in that. I'm guessing that's erased in some way, but
yeah, probably not counted.
Right.
Yeah, this is I think a good C selection based on what we've talked about so far. We'll see what the B and the A's look like, but yeah, I mean, there's a lot of talent here. The 4 that they're going to put on the field are, I think, definitely good, probably better than C almost in some ways. I mean, Fletcher Cox is at the end, but if you're rotating him more, then he could still be a very potent guy. Yeah. Javon Hargrave, obviously. Then you have Milton Williams, Jordan Davis behind them. That's strong starter, strong depth. And then the edge rush situation as well is very good. I mean, with Sweat, Graham, and Reddick, I mean, you got 3 pretty good guys there. So, yeah, this is definitely a strong defensive line.
You want to move it up? I will say, as far as their pass rush win rate, Useful Title points out that quarterbacks were quick passing the Eagles a lot last year. And yes, pass block win rate does not count if the quarterback throws the ball within 2.5 seconds, because it measures how many times guys hold their blocks for 2.5 seconds. So, right. So that may be it. Maybe the Eagles have a really high pass rush win rate because they were teams were throwing the ball so fast against them. So,
and then when teams were holding the ball,
when they were holding the ball, they were beating the blocks.
Interesting. Do you want to move the Eagles up, Brandon?
Them, yeah. I mean, yeah, we could put them alongside the Packers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Okay. Another C team, and another team where it's like, how do you evaluate a pass rush when opponents don't have to throw the ball on them, after the 3rd quarter or whatever? Jacksonville Jaguars, based on having Josh Allen and rookie Trayvon Walker on the edges, and some other players along the way who I think can play different positions there. Just kind of put them in the C category and see what you thought.
This one, yeah, I mean, I don't think that I would put them equal with the Jets and the Chiefs. There's just too many question marks here for me.
Okay.
I mean, we'll see about Trayvon Walker. Obviously he needs to fulfill a role with this team that he just didn't do at Georgia.
Right.
So some questions there. Chason has been a disappointment.
Oh yeah.
We'll see there. I like Arden Key a lot.
Yeah.
But we'll see. Without Chris Corserek, the defensive line coach in San Francisco, in that scheme, we'll see how he's used and all that. I mean, I like Josh Allen. He's pretty solid. Roy Robertson Harris is okay, but yeah, I don't see the upside here, or at least maybe not even the upside. I don't see the floor that I do with maybe the Jets and the Chiefs.
All right, let's move the Jaguars down to D+. They were a little bit below average in all the stats last year, so D+ works for them, I think.
Right. All right. Next, we have the Cincinnati Bengals. I think they have a very, very strong front four. And again, the games that are a lot of shootouts creates a lot of opportunities to see what they have in terms of having DJ Reader and Hendrickson. Don't see a lot of depth there, but Brandon, you can speak to that more.
Yeah. I mean, Joseph Asai is a guy that they are really going to be counting on this year. He showed some promise last year in the preseason, then got hurt, missed the whole rookie year. He was very raw coming out of Texas, but he's very athletic and he plays very hard. So he's going to get some effort, sacks, and if he could develop some technique, they could have something there. But yeah, they really need him to step up to give them that viable number 3 option off the edge. Hendrickson and Reader is a good top 2. BJ Hill's pretty solid. Sam Hubbard is pretty solid. This is I don't see them being with Green Bay or Philly, but yeah, or we have them below that anyway. That's probably okay for them. I mean, I might be a little lower on them than that, but we could see how it plays out a little bit.
All right.
They play very, very good team defense.
Yeah.
I think that's where their strength is.
That stymies me a lot of times where it's like, well, this defense is playing well. So it's like, well, there's coverage. So there's coverage sacks. And I get confused with that. Whereas, for the Chiefs, for example, there's no coverage. So there's less coverage sacks, but then you can see wins, when they get their hurries. And useful title points out, losing Ogunjobi was a significant factor. Next team, I just want to point out for the Denver Broncos here. I struggled with this. Aaron will talk again about how our metrics and the raw stats of the Broncos turn out very differently. Bradley Chubb and Randy Gregory have a combined career 37 sacks in 9 seasons. 37 sacks in 9 seasons, not counting the suspension. So really 10 seasons. And that's why I can look at these guys and we can talk about potential. We're talking about guys who've played a combined 10 seasons. I would need more than that to be excited about that 1-2 pass rush combination as more than a C.
Yeah,
stats wise, they were last in pass rush win rate last year, but of course that's only half a year of Chubb, half a year of Von Miller, and no Randy Gregory. They were 27th in pressure rate. They were 30th in blown block rate. Again, it's exactly what Mike said. I think it's how much do you expect the potential of Chubb and Gregory to be realized?
Right. Yeah. I mean, the injuries for Chubb obviously are concerning, and I was always a little lower on him even when fully healthy. He's primarily a power rusher, off the edge, a little bit one-dimensional, very good run defender, good all-around guy. But Randy Gregory, man, I mean, last year he was electric, and he is electric when he's on the field. He's just one of the more explosive guys in the NFL. He's in the top tier kind of guy. He's a problem to deal with when isolated against any tackle in the league. He can move inside. He could stunt really well. He could really unlock a lot of things. And I like their depth in terms of having Malik Reed and Nick Benito as your 3 and 4 off the edge. That's promising. I really like Draymond Jones, and I really like DJ Jones as well, even though he's better against the run than a pass rusher. So there's potential here, and they have Jonathan Cooper. So they're like 5 deep off the edge in terms of having like quality depth.
And they'll need all 5.
What's that?
Gregory get injured. They'll need
So if Gregory goes down or Chubb goes down, this unit's going to drop significantly. But, going into the year, I think having them here is probably fine.
Don't forget, by the way, if you're enjoying the video, like the video, subscribe to our channel on YouTube or Twitch. And if you're watching live here, ask your questions. We'll answer them live on the air. If you're listening afterwards on the podcast, come back and watch us live, 1:00 Eastern on Thursdays on YouTube and Twitch.
Up next, this is a team I made an erroneous assumption about, and it's the Tennessee Titans. I looked at their sack rates and I looked at their pressure numbers, which aren't phenomenal, but I can see, you got Landry, Autry, you got Bud Dupree when he's available, Simmons. And I made the erroneous assumption initially. It's like, well, I'm guessing they're sacking Davis Mills and Tyrod Taylor and Trevor Lawrence a million times. They only had 7 sacks against the Texans and the Jaguars. Their sacks, obviously, they had 9 against the Bengals in the playoffs, and they had a 5-sack game against the Rams and a couple other big sack games like that. Obviously, you talk about when it matters, it matters. So I put them at C, and only when I did my secondary research, I realized I think we got to put the Titans a little higher.
Yeah, this one for me, I mean, this is more of a high-end kind of unit, not a lot of depth here. Just looking at their depth chart, at least that I'm familiar with, not a lot of proven depth. But when you have Jeffrey Simmons, Danico Autry, those two guys are arguably the best interior pass rush duo in the NFL, certainly in the top 5, I would say. Autry is one of the most underrated pass rushers in the league, maybe the best guy in the league on stunts. And they run a ton of stunts in Tennessee. Yeah. That's how they generate their pressure. Harold Landry is, his numbers are a little inflated to me, but he's still a valuable player. He plays a ton of snaps, never quits. He's athletic, just kind of a one-trick pony guy, not a lot of counters and things like that, but he aligns wide off the edge and stunts inside, and he gets a good amount of pressure and stuff like that. But Bud Dupree to me is the wild card. If he's healthy and he's on the field for 14, 15 games or more, then we're probably going to be a little too low on this unit. But if not, then you're looking at a really good top 3 and then not a lot of depth. So, it's tough. Going into the year, it's probably fair to put them here, on par with the Packers and Eagles. But, I don't think the depth is as strong as those other 2 units.
All right. Yeah, because we did slide them up to C+ there. So I think
C+, definitely. For those big sack games they had, the Rams game, I mean, the Bengals game everyone remembers because it was the playoffs, but that Rams game I think was prime time, was fairly good.
Yeah.
The Minnesota Vikings, who I think their numbers were poor, and they added Zadarius Smith, and they're the Vikings, so I just stuck them here because I didn't want to think too hard about them because they're the Vikings.
And Danielle Hunter hopefully playing a full year.
That's right.
I guess you have to use the word hopefully about Zadarius Smith too. He's coming back from an injury as well.
Right. Yeah. This would be too high for me. Maybe you can make the case if Zadarius Smith and Danielle Hunter come back 100%, everything's good, they're on the field for 14 plus games, then yeah, maybe long term, they could be here. But I don't see a lot of depth at all. I don't know where they're going to get interior pressure from. Zadarius Smith is going to have to rush from the interior. That's how they're going to get it. They're going to have to get a jump from like Armon Watts. DJ Wonnum, I think, is kind of what he is at this point. I just don't see a lot of upside with this unit aside from Zadarius Smith and Hunter could just wreck games themselves, but there's not a lot of help around them.
Yeah, it's frustrating to me because our overall projections for the Vikings like their defense to rebound and be better this year. But when you look at each unit individually, it's a hard story to tell. So I'm fine with dropping them to D+.
All right, moving on down. The last team in C, Baltimore Ravens. Obviously been a rough week in Ravens land, particularly in the defensive line units. Jalen Ferguson passed away very young, 4th-year pro. I had the opportunity to interview him a couple of years back at the Senior Bowl. Great college player, great competitor, seemed like a wonderful young man. So that's a loss for the Ravens. At the top of their depth chart, this is a team that blitzes a lot. It has, some talent spread across. But I'm interested to hear, Brandon, your thoughts about what they have right now on the front seven.
Yeah, I think this is probably the highest I would want to put them because I think they're more of a team defense, blitz, to generate pressure kind of unit. If we're isolating the defensive line,
Sorry.
That's all right. Odefe Owe is the guy, who's going to have to turn into something, like a true number one bona fide guy because they don't really have that guy right now. I mean, Calais Campbell's still very good. Obviously, he's very old, but he definitely is still good. I wouldn't call him like a star or anything, but he's a very nice kind of complementary piece to have to move around, make other guys better, take attention away from other guys. But I mean, are they going to get anything from Ojabo this year? I don't know. This to me is more of a run defending defensive line who's going to generate pressure from, as a team and through scheme, as opposed to beating guys one-on-one.
It's sort of an interesting question, which is when we're judging these units, are we judging them based on just the talent and production of that unit, or do we judge them based on scheme? Like, does it make Baltimore a better pass rush that their scheme schemes up pass rush, or does that mean they're not as good a pass rush?
So when I do my rankings, I typically approach it where it's talent and, just isolating the defensive line. But I totally get, wanting to looking at the scheme, and those type of things because it ultimately does generate pressure. So yeah, either way, but that's how I kind of typically approach it because I'm so, dialed in on player evaluation on defensive line. So that's where my focus is. I'm looking at how guys are beating guys individually so I can help offensive linemen combat that. The scheme stuff I'm not paying as much attention to. So that's how I typically approach it. But yeah, however you guys want to do it.
There's two elements of scheme. One is blitzing the house all the time, which would seem to suggest that this is a deficiency of the actual pass rusher compensating. And there's other things like, we rush four, but we can do them from different angles, and we do stunts and we do things like that, which I think Tennessee is an example of a team that does real well. These are good players, and this is a value added, a force multiplier that we can do these things. And the Patriots are coming, and it probably will come up with them as well.
Right. The difference is with the Titans, they're rushing four, and they're getting it done with the defensive line.
Right.
As opposed to Baltimore, who plays more odd fronts, who's giving more exotic looks, and it's just different, So it's not as much driven from the defensive line,
So do you think we move the Ravens down, or would you leave them on the tier where they are?
So are we going to be looking at it from just pressure regardless of talent?
Let's talk about how good is not how much pressure does the team bring, but how good is the pass rushers, the defensive line, the outside linebackers.
I would probably move them down then.
Yeah. All right.
Did you move the Broncos up? I mean, they're still sitting there at C, and you.
Well, I don't know that one I kind of like there, just because there's question marks there with Chubb and Gregory, dependability, durability. That one, they have the talent to move up, but if I'm making a bet on a season-long, type of bet generating pressure, I would probably keep them there.
Okay. Let me hit you with a couple of teams I put at C+, and I have them lumped together because they each added a pass rusher to a team that already had a pass rusher. So they're trying to pump up their pass rush this offseason, and it looks good, but I haven't seen it on the field yet. I'm talking about the Raiders and the Chargers. Raiders adding Chandler Jones, and the Chargers adding Khalil Mack.
Yeah. This one's going to be interesting to look at. I'm looking at the Raiders right now, and obviously Max Crosby and Chandler Jones, you're not going to get a whole lot better than that, except maybe the Chargers, in terms of edge rush combinations. So the high end, edge rushers here are as good as it gets. But apart from them, not a whole lot else there. Vernon Butler and Bilal Nichols. Matthew Butler, the rookie from Tennessee, maybe that could be solid, but like you said, I would really be interested to see kind of how they're approaching things, when we watch the film, when we see them, how they're using guys, the positions are put in. But the top to bottom isn't like as impressive as you would think to me,
Right.
but certainly the edge rushers are as good as it gets. So it's probably fair for them to be, C plus. And then the Chargers, to me, I like this one probably a little bit more, just because I think Bosa is better than Crosby. I think Mack is better than Chandler Jones, or is good. That one's kind of a wash. But Bosa to me is, you can make the case he's the best edge rusher in the NFL. And so, yeah, Bosa to me, I just think is so good. And Mack, this one, we know the scheme is going to be good. They have Kyle Van Noy to kind of put in there as kind of that wild card guy to move around. Sebastian Joseph Day, Jerry Tillery can't defend the run, but he's a pretty decent pass rusher. So I like this one a little bit more than the Raiders. But again, usage with the Raiders, a little bit more unknown with the Raiders.
All right, let's put the Chargers at B for now.
I think that's probably fair, yeah.
Another C plus team. Just going to put them out there. The New Orleans Saints.
Yeah, Saints. I mean, this one, they're obviously, very talented up front. Team defense is also very strong.
Yes.
And that plays a big part in everything that they do. I really want to see what Peyton Turner does this year. I think he needs to become a little bit more consistent for them because Davenport is so up and down. Cam Jordan is getting older, but one of the most underrated players in the league. David Onyemata is a beast inside. I love his game. There's a lot of talent here for sure. I mean, where do we have them? C plus.
C plus.
Yeah, that's probably fair. Yeah, I mean, I think that's okay. Even the Chargers being above all these teams, I'm not totally sold on that yet either. But I'm very interested to see the next few teams to see if we kind of break up this cluster here.
Okay,
bit.
I'm going to throw the Browns in the C plus category.
Okay.
And I'm going to just share a couple of fascinating stats that do not match at all. Cleveland was third in ESPN's pass rush win rate last year, but 28th in pressure rate.
Yeah.
And they were halfway in between that when it came to sacks.
Maybe that's those three numbers combined to tell us something, and we have to find out what it is.
And of course, Myles Garrett is, great.
Myles Garrett is great. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Myles Garrett is definitely probably the most talented defensive lineman in the NFL. Maybe just him, and he's right after Aaron Donald for me. He kind of tapers off as the year goes on. He typically gets dinged up. A lot of attention is paid towards him, and he just has to deal with a lot of attention, and he does get dinged up, kind of similar to Joey Bosa. But getting Clowney back helps. Obviously he's a nice piece. I mean, I don't really love the collective roster on the defensive line here. Taven Bryan's been a big disappointment in Jacksonville. We'll see what he can do here. Perrion Winfrey, we'll see. He had a really good Senior Bowl and stuff.
Yes.
I don't know. It's kind of unknown right here to me. I mean, obviously Myles Garrett, you got the best edge rusher in the NFL. Clowney is, able to kind of wreck stuff. But yeah, I don't know. This one, yeah, I'm kind of questionable on them. But yeah, I mean, putting them, like I look at Philly here, like in this tier, and Philly to me, their depth is just so impressive. And I would just separate Philly almost from these teams, and even maybe Green Bay, Tennessee. Like those three to me are kind of different than these guys because Cleveland, the Raiders, the Saints, they're strong off the edge. The Saints have Onyemata, but I don't know. I think they're starting. To me, there's a little bit of separation that's coming to me with some of these teams in that C plus.
C plus, yeah.
Yeah.
So, where do you want to move? We can move some guys around to get the separation.
Yeah, could we just do a couple more teams and then?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. Last team I had in what was a C plus category is the Indianapolis Colts. I see Quentin Nelson behind you, an autographed Quentin Nelson. Brandon, what is Quentin Nelson's message to America?
Yeah, so it just says, thank you for bringing light to the offensive line and for your knowledge of the game. And yeah, I mean, Quentin, it was really cool of him to send that to me. And
Awesome.
we started talking when he was in Notre Dame, and just kind of established a relationship then. And yeah, I mean, it's really cool. I got a couple more jerseys coming too. I'm very excited about, but
Awesome.
yeah, this one's an awesome one that I treasure.
Well, he had to tell you about what it's like to block DeForest Buckner in practice and things like that. So go tell us about the Colts.
Yeah, so I'm really excited about this defensive line. I think getting Yannick Ngakoue is really going to help, especially because you have some other pieces in place to where he doesn't have to be the guy. DeForest Buckner is obviously the guy here. I think Chris Jones and him and maybe Justin or Jeffrey Simmons are probably like the next best interior rushers after Aaron Donald. So Buckner's a beast. Kwity Paye, I'm expecting him to make a little bit of a jump this year.
Mm-hmm.
I really like this kid from Vanderbilt, Dayo Odin Yingbo. He was hurt last year, played a little bit towards the end, but I really think that he could give them something this year. Tyquan Lewis isn't bad. So Grover Stewart's excellent against the run, doesn't get much against the pass, but there's some potential here, I think, with that top three. If Kwity Paye can make a little bit of a jump, then they have a strong top three. But yeah, so they're interesting. I like them probably in that C plus.
I'd leave them in the C plus category, but I wouldn't put them lower. I think based on last year, they might be a little lower, but I think if you add in Ngakoue and then you consider the idea of Paye likely improving, I think that they're a little higher than last year. So I think I'd leave them as a C plus.
Yeah, and if Dayo, the second year guy, can regain some of what he had after the torn Achilles, then yeah, they could really have something.
All right, I'm going to hit you with the three teams in a row here, real quick, that I put at B, and quick explanations as to why. The New England Patriots, due to Matt Judon and Belichickian scheme wisdom, and I guess Barmore goes in there too. The Rams, because of Aaron Donald and Leonard Floyd, and the Washington Commanders, because if you look at it on paper, it should be phenomenal. We saw it on the field; it was kind of but Young was hurt for a while, but the raw ability of these guys of this front four said B to me. So have at it.
I'm going to actually maybe argue for the Rams to be higher. The Rams were number one in pass rush win rate. I know that includes half a year of Von Miller, but they did really well in all the pass rushing stats. And I mean, like, how many people does Aaron Donald count for? So I actually think that the Rams might be more of a B plus than a B.
When I did my low leverage situation stats and said who was getting first down pressures and second down pressures, et cetera, the Rams blew it away in terms of pressures. They didn't get as many sacks as some of the other teams we're going to talk about here, but their hurry rate was off the charts because it's like it's your random first down, you're doing a play action pass, and Donald's in the backfield. Donald's just in the backfield, and he's disrupting something. So,
yeah, I mean, obviously Aaron Donald makes everyone better. I think the Von Miller ad, though, and the loss are significant because Von Miller was outstanding. And I think this is not going to be as good of a defensive line as it was last year because of Von Miller not being there. It's not like they added anybody that I'm seeing on the depth chart that's going to be anywhere near Von Miller. So, I don't know. I don't see them, being what they were last year. But Aaron Donald obviously is, the best guy in the league. I'd probably move the Patriots down. The scheme thing, like you said, if we're considering that.
I think if we move the Ravens down because they scheme it up, we should also move the Patriots down because they scheme it up.
Yeah, because their defensive line is, a lot of really good run defenders on this defensive line. Judon is a good pass rusher, power guy, wide nine, he could do some things for sure. And Barmore is an excellent rookie, but apart from those two, I'm just seeing a lot of good run defenders here. We'll see about Josh Uche from Michigan. He has a lot of talent, but couldn't even see the field last year a lot.
Right.
He's kind of a wild card, but yeah, this is a scheme generated pressure unit all the way for sure.
Okay. Now I'm going to move right up to B plus, but I need 1 second because something is malfunctioning here. That's the wrong one. Here we go. B plus. Start with the Miami Dolphins, who have a lot of quantity of guys who are pretty good pass rushers. Not necessarily guys I think of as high quality pass rushers or top lines. I obviously love to hear your opinions on that, Brandon. But their low leverage pressure rate that I've been talking about was first, 42.8% pressure rate on first downs and second downs. You've got Agba, you got Phillips on the line, you've got Pappy Van Winkle, the bourbon off the edge. Not huge household names, but they seem to be getting the job done.
Kind of similar to the Patriots in terms of,
right,
scheme. We'll see now, with the different coaching staff. Yeah. Obviously, they're not going to have, that Patriots influence anymore.
Sorry, Graham was in New York.
I
remember who was the defensive coordinator last year in Miami?
One of Florida's guys.
The head coach was what's his name in Pittsburgh now.
Yeah, it's about Florida. It's a Belichickian system.
Right. Yeah. So that's what it was. And they were generating it from, they're going, zero blitz. You remember the Ravens game. They're generating pressure off scheme. Melvin Ingram, I love. I think that's a great guy to kind of inject into here. That's a really nice piece. Phillips had a good rookie year. Christian Wilkins is a pretty good player. Ogbah's underrated, but I wouldn't put them, I would probably put them in like that Broncos tier, probably to me.
Okay. Yeah, and if you're going to move the Patriots down for scheme while Belichick's still there, and we're going to move the Titans, or we're going to talk about the Titans scheme while they're still there, Flores is gone.
Yeah.
I wouldn't
that scheme might not help them anymore.
I'd put the Dolphins where the Patriots are. I wouldn't move them lower than that. Josh Boyer was the Dolphins defensive coordinator, and he's still there. So there may still be some of that Belichick influence, even though they changed the offense. Obviously, is going to change dramatically. The whole Miami chapter is basically about how the offense is going to change dramatically.
I forgot what a poop show that was. There's so many other things have happened lately. I forgot what a poop show.
With two offensive coordinators.
Oh my God! Now the on the B plus list is the Dallas Cowboys, and I just was completely befuddled by this team. Statistically, they look good. We know Micah Parsons can play. We know Tank Lawrence is a heck of a ball player. They lost Randy Gregory. So I put them at B plus because the numbers from a pass rush standpoint are so good. And I couldn't tell how much of that was facing Danny Jones and Tyler Heineke a lot.
I guess I'd move them down because there's no more Gregory to the regular B instead of B plus.
That's fine with me.
So B is the most popular tier right now, right? I can't.
No, C plus is right now the most popular tier.
Yeah, I wouldn't. Yeah, I might go C plus. Honestly, Demarcus Lawrence, and we'll see how much Parson is playing edge. I'm assuming if he's just going to be a full-time edge rusher, then okay. I could see they have a dynamic top two. Dante Fowler is kind of a good depth piece. Sam Williams, we'll see what he could do. He has a lot of talent. But the interior, Odighizola, the rookie from UCLA, pretty talented guy, but there's not a whole lot on the interior there at all. This one I don't see a lot of depth here, and apart from the top two guys, I just don't see a whole lot of talent on this defensive line, at least proven talent.
C plus?
Yeah, let's throw the Cowboys into C plus for now too.
We're all being math teachers here. We're giving everybody.
We're actually downgrading everybody a little bit. We're instead of grade inflation, it's a little bit of grade deflation.
These guys ain't getting downgraded. San Francisco 49ers. Now their pass rush statistics kind of look bad in part because I think the secondary was bad. I think there was probably some slow games in there as well. But we all know the personnel is strong. I had Drake Jackson, who I think is an intriguing person to add to a defensive line that's already got a couple of marquee players.
No problem. I have no problem with San Francisco being here. Nope.
If anything, I'd move them up. But
Yeah, maybe.
yeah, this is good. Yeah, you can move them up for now, and we'll see. But yeah, I mean, arguably the best defensive line coach in the league,
Yeah.
one of the best defensive coordinators in the league, which we're not accounting for scheme, but the defensive line coach, I think, is for this team significant because
Yeah, that's different from scheme because that's coaching up technique and stuff, and
Yeah,
that's,
exactly.
I think that counts as guys' talents.
Right.
Yeah, and I mean Nick Bosa, Eric Armstead, that's an outstanding top two. We'll see if Kinlaw can provide anything this year, but there's depth here as well. There's a lot of depth, and there's a high likelihood that the coaching in place is going to get the most out of a lot of these guys as well. So I feel very good about feeling strongly about this unit.
Ash, CFB, we're not done yet, and we might look at these again for the Titans and say there's 17,000 teams getting a C+. Maybe we'll move them around. We'll wait and see. Last team on this tier, Brandon, you've been talking about team defense a lot, excellent team defense, and that made me struggle in terms of the Buffalo Bills, who I think play outstanding team defense, added Von Miller, and have a lot of guys, can throw a lot of guys at you on the defensive front four. At the same time, you lose Addison, you lose Hughes, who I don't think was much of a factor anymore. But I had a hard time saying, well, is this a great pass rush or is this a really great defense, great offense, which means teams are playing catch-ups, which means you get pass rush opportunities.
I will say again, Hughes had a ton of pressures last year. I think he's still an impact player, not as much of an impact player as Von Miller, but he's still an impact player. The Bills were number one last year in causing blown blocks by opponents, and they were second in pressure rate. They were sixth in ESPN's pass rush win rate. And when you add Von Miller to that, I think that's definitely B+, definitely.
Yeah, I feel good about them at B+. More of a great team defense than great pass rush in the past, but this year I think it could be, a very good pass rush because of the Von Miller ad.
And then you have the two guys that were rookies last year. You got to expect Rousseau and Basham. At least one of them will be better this year.
Yeah. They got depth on the interior as well. Yeah, I like them.
All right, so right now we have one team at A, the San Francisco 49ers, another team at A, which I don't think is going to be very controversial, the Pittsburgh Steelers. A fun little fact I pulled up, I looked at first down sacks, because again, I love this idea that it's first down, and it's a neutral down, and the pass rush is just getting a win. The Steelers led the league in first down sacks. They got 18 sacks on first downs last year. T.J. Watt was 6, Wormley had a couple, Hayward had a couple. I think this is a non-controversial call, right? The Steelers today.
Here's a wild series of stats, though. Pittsburgh was second in adjusted sack rate, and of course, first in actual sacks. But they were only 16th in pressure rate and 15th in pass rush win rate.
Yeah.
So how much do we feel is here beyond T.J. Watt and Cameron Hayward?
Not a ton. I don't think. Ogunjobi's he's very inconsistent, but he gives a lot of splash plays. That's been in his whole career. And his splash plays are very impressive, but it's nice that he's kind of like the third guy here, maybe the fourth, because Alex Highsmith is actually pretty talented. I like Alex Highsmith. But yeah, not a ton of depth, but the Steelers, man, you could usually count on them getting, a surprise season out of somebody.
Right.
Watt and Hayward obviously is, in conversation for, the best interior outside duo presence in the league. Chris Wormley is, pretty solid. He had a pretty good year last year. Yeah, I mean, I'm fine with them being on par with the 49ers, I think, and I like the Niners a little bit more, but I don't know if it's enough to separate them by a tier.
Okay. Now, there is no S tier because Aaron just aggressively gatekeeps the S tier whenever I try to put a team on S tier. He's like, no, those are not the 1985 Bears. They cannot be on. They're not the 2007 Patriots. They cannot be on the S tier. So I did. Now I would have put this final team on there, except they lost guys. It's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Obviously, there's no drama. You can look at the screen and see what's happening. And because I don't think JPP, Ndamukong Suh are coming back, they did add Akeem Hicks. They did add a rookie who I really like, who I'm
Logan Hall.
Logan Hall, spacing on one of Brendan Clausen's favorites as well. But A tier, also a high blitzing team, so maybe that's a concern. But I felt comfortable with them on an A tier.
Yeah, I'm good with the Bucs there. I really like their defensive line.
Do you expect enough from Tryon Shoyinka to put them in this tier?
He's had some really nice flashes, man, as a rookie. He gave Andrew Whitworth a lot of trouble. He has a lot of talent, a lot of explosiveness, the tools. Yeah, I think that's probably a pretty good bet to make that he's going to ascend. Shaq Barrett is very good. I mean, JPP, I mean, the fact that they got Akeem Hicks, I think that's probably an upgrade over Sue at this point. Logan Hall to drop in here with Vita Vea. I mean, William Golston on the, is like your 6th or 7th guy. I mean, this defensive line is loaded.
My one negative, other than, Tryon Shoyinka is still a bit unproven, is there's no depth. Like their third edge rusher would be Anthony Nelson, who was a 4th-round pick in 2019 and not someone that anybody ever talks about.
I like what they're going to get up the middle. I think you're going to wind up seeing Hall blitzing from an interior gap.
If either Barrett or Tryon Shoyinka gets hurt, they're in trouble.
Yeah, I would agree with that. But you could say, I mean, some of these units we have, well, you could say, I mean, the Chargers, if one of their guys gets hurt, they're done. They're going to have to be pure scheme.
Right. Like Hitchhiker's Pie just point out Devin White is a very good pass rushing linebacker.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not considering him because he's an off-ball linebacker. But if you're talking about team pressure, approach, yeah, for sure. But that's a piece I'm not factoring in. But yeah, that helps from a schematic perspective and everything for sure. I really, just looking at our list now, I think Green Bay, Philly, and Tennessee, those guys, I just like the depth. I like the high-end guys there. I would probably be fine moving all of them up and getting them out of that tier, just personally.
Yeah, I don't know what to do about the fact that this keeps coming up with Green Bay when we talk about defense. The numbers just the scouting viewpoint on the Green Bay defense is just much higher on them than any of the numbers are.
Right.
And that's why I would be hesitant to move Green Bay up. But that came up with run defense, that came up with secondary, that came up. That just comes up over and over with the Green Bay defense is that the people who look at the roster and scout those guys feel like there is it's not just that there's more talent than the numbers show, but that it's going to work together better than the numbers show. That by adding Wyatt and
Walker,
that the talent works together better. So we'll leave the Packers here because you definitely know more about pass rush than I do, but I just want to put that asterisk on it that it feels like the Packers should be so much better than they have been. Maybe this is the year. Maybe it is going to be so much better this year, but it just hasn't been.
As a team defense or as a pass rush from the defensive line?
Both. I mean, both.
Yeah. I think the defensive line, part of this is betting on Rashawn Gary getting even better.
Right.
But the trajectory, I think, signals that. Then just dropping Devontae Wyatt into it, now I think they're 4 strong, in terms of 2 guys on the interior with Wyatt and Clark, Smith and Gary on the outside. Plus, like I mentioned, Dean Lowry is a nice guy to kind of have off the bench who could give you some power on the interior. Jerron Reed could give you a little bit of power on the interior. So the interior, I think, is very strong. Mm-hmm. The edge rushers, though, if one of those guys gets hurt, then we could be, talking about a unit that is going to need more scheme to generate pressure. There's not a lot of depth there. But, yeah, I think the top 4 or 5 here, I feel very good about.
John Ward asks, since you do both offensive line and pass rush, which is better, Tampa's pass rush or Tampa's pass blocking?
That's a great question. I think this year there's a little bit more uncertainty. If we're going off of the last year or the last few years, I would probably give the edge to the offensive line. but it's very close. They might have the best combination in the NFL of offensive line and defensive line. So they're both high-end tier units. It's just this year they have 2 new starters on the offensive line. Granted, I have high expectations for both of them, but we'll see. There's a little bit more uncertainty this year, so now it's kind of a wash, if anything. But yeah, typically I would go offensive line.
Yeah. All right, this is our tier list. Here we are. We're good.
Are we good? We comfortable?
See what people have comments on. Yeah, do you have any other teams you want to move?
I mean, a lot of these I could get pulled in different directions. I'm trying to look at if there's anything.
Atlanta, you can't get pulled in any different directions without that.
Not with Atlanta, but like I'm looking at the Giants. For some reason there. I mean, Thibodeau, I think could really, be a pretty impactful guy, and they have, Ojulari, who had a very good rookie year. Leonard Williams, like I said, I think I'm maybe a little bit higher on him than most, even though he's inconsistent. So that one, I don't know if I would move him up necessarily, but that one's definitely a question.
If we're circling back to the Giants, we've never circled back to the Giants this year. The Giants have been a train wreck for the last 2 years. If we're circling back, let's move them up. Let's give it to them.
If we move the Giants up, do we also move the Lions up because of Hutchinson?
Well, they don't have the interior presence.
They don't have the interior guy. They don't have the Leonard Williams type.
No, they don't have that upside there that I can see. And off the edge, I mean, if you want to say Hutchinson and Thibodeau are a wash, then you got to go to Ojulari versus Aquara or Harris. Maybe a little bit more depth in Detroit, but I feel like we got to see, because Aquara with the torn Achilles, I want to see if he's back to what he was in 2020, then, and I knew that, I probably would say yes, but I just don't have as much confidence there for those reasons. So that one's a little bit tricky to me, but potentially, yeah. I mean,
all right. So let's put the Giants at D+. We'll leave the Lions at D.
Yeah, that one's so close. The Vikings, like I'm a little lower on them, but I mean, I love Daniil Hunter and Zadarius Smith is potentially a dynamic duo. There's just not much else there. So it depends, like, are we looking at this? Do we ideally want this list of teams to carry through the entire year? We're trying to project sustainability. I wouldn't feel as good about the Vikings because they have 2 guys. And if one of those guys gets hurt, I mean, it's,
all right.
So,
okay.
All right.
Yeah, that one's tough because there's upside there because the 2 guys are so good. But the floor kind of scares me a little bit there. Yeah. So, man, the Jets I like probably more than the Dolphins. And I don't know if you move Dolphins down.
I think with the numbers, I would want to leave it this way, though, because Miami really has brought a lot of pass rush over the last couple of years.
Right. And yeah, you're projecting a little more with the Jets. Like Lawson's going to be there and he's going to be this, and
Right. I'm just looking at players on the defensive line, not scheme either on that one. So,
all right. I'm good with this tier list.
Yeah, that's fine. We could pick it apart, but yeah, that's good.
All right, so that's what we'll put that up and see what people think about it. So, Brandon, thank you so much for joining us. Again, folks, Brandon's newsletter is Trench Warfare, so search for that on Substack. Just like ridiculously good information about both pass rush and offensive line. He is the expert also for the website Establishing the Run. Thank you all for listening and watching the show. We will be back next Thursday at 1 p.m. Jeff Schwartz will be our guest, and next Thursday we're doing offensive lines. So Tampa Bay will be high. And yes, 1982 DVOA is arriving on the site this afternoon, and 1981 is arriving next week. So if you like history.
My childhood. It's not history. It's my youth. That's not history. It was just yesterday. It was only yesterday.
Mike's youth, and how much cocaine were the Philadelphia Eagles on in 1981 will be considered on the site later today. Mike said to me when I sent stuff out, he said, it's got to be a special asterisk for the early 80s because of all the drugs. All right. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening. Thank you for watching. Please rate the show if you're listening to the podcast. And we will see you next Thursday, 1 p.m. Eastern, to do offensive lines. So long, everybody.